Shalom and welcome again to Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. I am your host, Rabbi Richard Address. Thank you for joining us today. We do appreciate your time. If you'd like to send us a note suggesting ideas, commenting on the programs, just email me at rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com or go visit the website as well, jewishsacredaging.com. And on your way, stop at the Facebook page and pay us a visit. So much for social media. The topic for today is one that I would bet you that the majority of us have had experience with. And if you haven't, no doubt you probably will in the course of your lifetime. And that has to do with what we call in our workshop, the art of caregiving. And to walk us through it, a very, very fascinating and important new book on this subject, I'd like to welcome two Seekers of Meaning, Elissa Strauss, who is the author of, pardon the little things that I was making notes as I was reading through it, Elissa's book, When You Care, The Unexpected Magic of Caring for Others. The Unexpected Magic of Caring for Others When You Care. Elissa, welcome. How are you? How you doing?
All right. I'm so happy to be here and have this conversation with you.
Well, thank you. And you're coming to us from beautiful Oakland, California, so know it well. The first question I got to ask you is that subtitle, The Unexpected Magic of Caring for Others. That may sound kind of like strange to some people who haven't done this. Talk to me about that phrase.
Yeah. So, if I'm going to disclose everything, that was a much belabored phrase in the publicity department of Simon & Schuster. We had long subtitles. We had short subtitles. We featured the word power. We featured the word value. Everyone went back and forth. At some point, I was like, you guys figure this out. Do what you want. It's like, and at some point, someone alighted upon the word magic. And, I'm kind of of two minds of this word. I think in many ways, magic really suggests this like deep transformative possibilities that happen in care and that get totally ignored by society overall. On the other hand, I sometimes do worry magic sounds a little too easy and sweet. Like you wave a wand and voila, you're transformed and isn't life better? And for any of us who've ever cared for someone, doesn't exactly work that way. I had someone in a book reading come up to me and say, and she'd already read my book in advance before I did the talk. And she said, I saw your subtitle. I wanted to hate you, but then I read your book and I love you. I was like, okay, I can live with this. So that's magic, and then I guess, right, maybe we live in the Disney version of magic and and that's where I get the pushback from. But I think real magic, the real kind of transformative energy that changes reality and changes ourselves and our perceptions of reality is never quite so sweet, never quite so easy. And certainly if we look at like the ancient Jewish textual tradition, the magic usually is, Jacob wrestling with the angel is the magic. It's not the fairy godmother waving her wand. So maybe for a Jewish audience, the magic will resonate more.
Yeah, well, I love the phrase only because having A, walked this walk myself, and B, done enough things with congregations on this, there are moments when a certain transformation takes place. And whether you want to call that a spiritual moment, a Shehechianu moment, or a magical moment, that's okay. But it does take place. And then your research, and there are estrangements that have been healed through the process of performing the mitzvah. And so that's why I just wanted to start off with that very, very lovely phrase in the title. I can imagine they probably were some very interesting conversations with you and the publisher around the table, or long distance, or on Zoom, or whatever. Caregiving, we now define, and I'm interested in your opinion, is really a new life stage. Because it's something that can last, as you know, not weeks or months or years, but even sometimes decades. Do you see this as a new life stage?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to note that my book covers also the parenting relationship. So I think almost from my viewpoint, forget stage, it's almost just life. Most of us spend the majority of our lives on one half of a care relationship,
right,
whether we're the recipient of care as children. We, maybe get a decade plus-ish off, and then but there are also many 20-year-olds caring for adult parents. Now that number's skyrocketing, so let's not dismiss them. And then we care for our children, we care for our parents, and then we receive care, and sometimes those happen all at once or out of order. So yeah, I think absolutely, it's if we really open the aperture, it's beyond a stage. It's actually our entire lives. And something that's kind of hiding in plain sight. But if we think specifically about caregiving for adult parents, then it is a stage. And the sad thing is, I am 44, and starting to happen now. More and more of my peers are starting to care for their adult parents, and they all seem blindsided by it. So it's this like big stage of life. You're right; it's not 2 years, and at the same time, no one seems to see it coming. So there's something so kind of paradoxical about the undeniable reality of care, the fact that with demographic shifts, people are doing more and more care than ever, alongside medical advances that are helping people live longer. So we're in this period of time where we're doing more and more care than ever, and no one sees it coming somehow.
What's fascinating is that there are no organized, unless you found them, organized classes in caregiving. In other words, what are some of the basics? Where do you go for resources? How do you generate self-care? All of which are embedded in the Jewish tradition. When you unpack all the Jewish texts around caregiving, from the Torah to the Talmud to all kinds of contemporary issues. But I always thought somebody should really create that curriculum, whether it's from a faith-based or non, of how to take care of something. It's not only older parents. I mean, you have significant numbers of people, as you know, caring for spouses and children. So it is as you say, multi-generational and interlocked, interwoven in a whole variety of ways. You write about something called care ethics, which fascinated me. Define what you mean by care ethics.
Yeah. So, right, we all have a few little tricks we use to decide what's the right thing to do in a situation. A common one is a kind of rules-based ethic. We don't kill. The 10 Commandments says don't kill, so we don't kill. Another one is thinking about ethics through the lens of virtue. So I am an honest person. Honesty is a virtue of mine, so I don't lie. Another way of thinking about it is sometimes called utilitarian ethics. Like, you're going to figure out any particular action or decision that you make, will it maximize good or bad in the world? So maybe if you lie, but you save 100 people's lives, then the lying was the right choice. But if you don't lie, you only save one person's life, or 2 people die. So it's not about forget the honesty virtue. It's all about whether being honest will actually lead to more good. So here comes care ethics into the scene, something that really took form in the 1980s and on. And they inserted this idea that sometimes the decision between right and wrong is not about your big virtues, is not about big abstract rules, which Judaism loves, of course, right? It's not about figuring out, globally speaking, and is this going to maximize good or bad? It's about the relationship. It's about doing the best thing for the relationship, for that one and only person in this one and only moment right in front of you. And nobody's saying that all ethics should be one or the other, that forget everything else. We should only be focusing on relationships in our ethics. All it's suggesting is that, hey, sometimes those big abstract rules, and I think all Jews know this, right? I remember my ultra-Orthodox kind of second cousin once removed came to my bat mitzvah in Israel because his rabbi figured, you know what? No, you're not supposed to go to a bat mitzvah, but you know what, this is your cousin. She's in Israel. This is her daughter. Like, go to it. It's fine. So that's an example of care ethics, right? You know, it's like sometimes we put the relationship should matter. This is about preserving the relationship with a relative, which is this, you know, Orthodox rabbi thought was more important than following an interpretation of a law. And care ethics is something that, whether we're conscious of it or not, we think about all the time when we're caring for another, especially someone, whether they're a young child or they have some form of dementia, may not have the ability to kind of have a full and deep understanding, cognitively speaking, of the world. So we're constantly moving in between thinking like, what does this human, this one and only human, again, right in front of me need? And what's kind of the broader right decision for me to do?
It's fascinating that you put it in a context of relationships, which is a theology that I ascribe to, but also in my understanding of our tradition, I'm amazed how the fact that our tradition, Judaism, is a very, very much contextual religious civilization. And it has, as you said, the global good, the global, this is what you're supposed to do. But it also says, yeah, that's really cool, but you really need to apply it to the individual in front of you. And that's where the ball game is played. So this is why I wanted to ask you about the care ethics, because I think it's, as you say, given technology and given all the wild cards that go into autonomy, et cetera, in decision making, this very, very simple, this is a person I care for and I'm caring for. And this is the particular context that we're faced with. Now let's make a decision. So thank you for, and that's, I think one of the gifts of the book is this extrapolation, as you just did very quickly. It's in the book about various ethical traditions and then the care ethics.
Yeah.
So I'm also fascinated because you write about this, and I as a rabbi very pleased to see you writing about it. The role of faith in caregiving, this theology of care, so to speak. How did you come to this? Is this part of who you are? Is this something from your research that showed you, wow, yeah, the spiritual component, wild card of this is really important, or all of the above?
Yeah, I think, almost all of the above comes from my curiosities that were born through caring for my sons and being in this dependency relationship where these humans just depended on me. And kind of the eye-opening parts of that. And then from that curiosity, from that seed, just going and digging and talking to anyone I could find, including you, who's thought about care through the lens of spirituality. I'll say for me, care brought me closer to, this thing I call God than I've ever been before. For me, care was like a front row seat to the both miracle, the true miracle of life, and the fragility of life. The fact that somehow my sons came into the world and that there's unique consciousnesses, and what the heck, wow. And I think that can translate too when you care for a parent as well, right? You kind of see them through a different lens. And also the fact that they are just this, this unique concept, these unique consciousnesses, these one and only people, and the kind of magic and mystery of that is very real. And at the same time, right, that fragility piece, to know that poof, it all could go away. Frankly, poof, eventually it all does on some level go away. And wrestling with that strangeness and that really what feels like just this paradox of life. And, it's almost, if I think novelistically, I mean, every character is drawn with such particulars, and our lives have so many dimensions, and yet it's part of this bigger experience that we can't even grasp. And I feel like when you carry, you're in both lanes at once, always. And, what is that? Well, I mean, I'll speak for myself, but that was a relationship with God right there, to balance the strange bigness of it all and the very strange and beautiful smallness of it all.
Well, you define caregiving in the book you define caregivers as those in intimate, ongoing relationships of care, quote unquote. The key word, as I read that and was thinking about it, and then thinking about just everybody's journey in this, is the word intimate. Because when you care for somebody on that level that you're talking about, it is a very intimate relationship. Very intimate relationship. And that's when it can become very spiritual. I think if you open your heart to that. Did you choose that word intimate, careful?
Yeah, absolutely. I think part of it was that, a lot of people do care. Teachers do care. Nurses definitely do care. And I'm not talking about, nurses that come and live with you in your house, because then they do intimate care. But nurses in a hospital where they're parachuting in and out, doctors do care. But there's something particular about an ongoing intimate relationship of care that I felt like was one of the deepest, most profound human experiences that had actually never really been kind of wrestled with and exposed and looked into before, because we have such a big blind spot in our culture, not just the reality of care, but the reality of dependency, the reality of vulnerability. And I think with that, that word intimate carries so much, because when you're intimate with someone, it doesn't just bring you closer to them, it brings you closer to yourself, to your vulnerability, to your fragility, to your dependency as a person. And it's like, it could be anything from the kind of bodily activities involved with care, the poop and the pee and the everything else, that is so, I think, deeply spiritually humbling and difficult and stinky and all the above, right? But also deeply spiritually humbling. And again, not just because you're witnessing in the other, you realize that you too have this body, you too have this soul, you too will need. And I think that's where intimacy unlocks something that can really just break open so many of these barriers that prevent us from having deeper and richer relationships with God.
Again, it goes back to that sense of relationship.
Yes.
You also write a very interesting sentence about, well, let me just read it to you. Quote, care is how future citizens and employers are created. Care is how we maintain dignity, unquote. What does that mean?
So, right, on one hand, sometimes we forget about the public good of care. There's, parents, particularly these days, are often portrayed as basically selfish or self-indulgent when they're caring for their kids. And some are, sure. But I think most parents I know are working their butts off, not so their kid goes to Harvard or speaks perfect Mandarin or, makes, Carnegie Hall. I think that's a stereotype, and it's really not an accurate representation. Most parents I know want to raise good kids,
right, that
are going to be mensches and that they're going to contribute to society. Maybe not dominate society. Maybe some have that, up their tushes, but most everyone I know just wants their kids to contribute, to be good people, and when they're adults, to be people that people can rely on for care, right? And I think there's something kind of, if we're going to almost use the language of the markets, productive about care, right? We create future citizens. And I think let's not limit this just to children, because I also think when we're speaking about care for older people, we also can enable them to contribute to society. I know there's women in my synagogue that they can't drive anymore, but if someone gives them a ride, they can get there early and help cook the whole kiddish lunch, right? And how meaningful is that for them? And how meaningful is that for me as a mom who shows up, tired, working mom, loves that someone cooks me a kiddish lunch, right? So there's ways that by caring for also people that are older, that we actually do help them contribute to society. And then I think, right, not everyone is in a position to contribute to society. And that's where the dignity piece comes in. And we speak so often about and human rights, talks and kind of global politics conversations, that like the most fundamental thing any human deserves is dignity. And I believe left out of that often is the fact that, like, how do humans get dignity? What is actually the vehicle for dignity? It's care. Care is the brick from which, like, the big buildings of dignity are built. But caregivers are so often not seen. And it's dignity is not a, we can have big policies to help ensure dignity, but at the end of the day, dignity comes down to that relationship.
Right.
That's how it happens. The care.
We're in a society with increased isolation, the impact of technology. I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the growth of a couple of things. One, the contracting out of care, and two, the growth of the use of robotics to assist caregiving, especially people in long distance caregiving who can't be close to a loved one. But the contracting out and the robotics, two very, very different things. But I love your take on it.
Yeah, I think that right now our care system is so broken. So I don't want to, we should keep trying everything at once. I think, some outsourcing certainly is wonderful, because I think part of the reason we have this fantasy and fiction that people can do all the care for another by themselves is because we've never really had curiosity about care. We've never really valued care. Humans did not evolve to provide care on their own. They evolved to provide care in networks, whether for young or the old. And we're still those same people. We just don't have the networks anymore, right? So we need those solutions. We need to find ways to support caregivers. And I think in many cases, some outsourcing is something that an individual caregiver should never feel guilty about. Ever, ever, ever. It's actually how humans were designed, through evolutionary time. So I think, to the particulars of how that outsourcing works and ways we could do it better and worse. I'll go ahead and say we could definitely do it better. I know that the system's so broken right now. We have a lot of undertrained professional caregivers who are paid really poor wages. The whole thing needs, in my belief, deep systemic support from the government, and a whole re-envisioning of what outsourcing care and supportive care can look like. As far as the robotics, I have read a few things that suggest, they can take the edge off for caregivers, but they're not going to replace people. Really, my favorite thing I've read about robotics is that I actually get the sense that when people who need care, so maybe someone in a nursing home, when they have a robot who needs them to care for it, they actually get more psychological benefits than being cared for by a robot. And I think it's, and again, there's so many different robotics happening in so many different ways, being implemented in beautiful, nurturing places versus horrible places where it's, instead of a human touch, a human hand. So, I think it's hard to say good or bad at any particular circumstance, but I kind of love this reminder that the caregiving instinct is so deep in us that I've seen, again, more positive studies about giving dependent older people, the ability to care by way of robots than receiving care by robots.
Fascinating. And I wanted to raise the issue, not only because there are startups and people talking about this and people marketing, robotics to help people, and and it is a part of our future that we're going to have to deal with, because it's happening now. It's not science fiction. And it's going to get more increasingly, is with AI expanding. Who knows? But it's going to be part of the options of, I think, of our children and my grandchildren. I have to talk to them about what kind of robot I want.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, listen, may it develop in a way that understands care that people who really get care, the people developing these products and not people just out for profit or simplifying things. And may it develop in a way where it liberates and takes off the right amount of burden so that actually the relationship piece, right, can actually stay, but managing the doctors can somehow be given to AI. You know, I think we all have heard or experienced firsthand enough caregiving stories or just managing doctors and medicines and this and that is the hardest part. And that's almost the most draining thing. And that takes someone, that takes up so much bandwidth that someone then can't be emotionally present with the person they're caring for. So, you know, may robotics take away that burden so we can actually put more of our energy into that quality time and to connecting with the other and to seeing the other, loving the other, having fun with the other.
You write about this in the book, and which is another reason why it's very important for people to look at this book, about the economics of caregiving. I can't tell you how many times this comes up in conversations with families, individuals, and in workshops, that people are legitimately scared. That in the United States system, and you have some of the statistics in the book, there is a real division, an economic divide on access to health care, the cost of health care. The majority of our people just, if they have to enter the system, as I call it, are overwhelmed. What do you see, given the realities of where we are now, and having written the book and researched it and lived this, how do we begin to navigate this minefield of the economics of caregiving?
Yeah, I think it's something that is really not an individual project with an individual solution overall. It is, the system could not be more broken, and we are going broke as a result. I mean, you really basically have to choose between a job and good care and paying your mortgage. You have to, spend down all your money just to be eligible for any government benefits. It just could not be more broken. There could not be a bigger systemic blind spot to an enormous issue than there is when it comes to elder care in the United States. And I think, it's really something that's hard unless, you win the lottery or you are already quite well off. It is essentially impossible to manage well on your own. And that's where this policy change has to come in. And there's great organizations. One of my favorite is Caring Across Generations, that is working really hard to make these policy changes. The leader of it, Ai-jen Poo, speaks often about, we have all kind of infrastructure and we need care infrastructure, right? And anyone who's ever cared, it's like, yep, we do. We need some support system that kind of holds up our efforts to care. And I wish I had better news, or I wasn't so bleak about it. But I really think that right now, sadly, care is basically impossible for many people in this country, particularly with elder care. With children, we have public schools, right? People forget that we have this, that those who resist care infrastructure and it terrifies them, they forget that we actually have public schools. And they're these wonderful places where you send your kids all day and they are free and your kids are, knock wood, safe. And hopefully if it's going all right, they're learning things and learning how to be good people and good citizens. But nothing like that for elder care, even though really just millions and millions of people are doing it, and millions of people have someone in their lives that they love who needs someone around all day. But there's no equivalent to anything for such a massive population where it's a guaranteed built-in break to go earn money or take a shower or go for a nice walk or take a deep breath. And it's really tragic. There many people have written that in the next 20, especially 25, 30 years as baby boomers age out, that the costs associated with elder care will leapfrog the costs associated with child care. And that will be one of the major economic drains upon a family. And certainly we're seeing that. And I remember
many years ago, pre-pandemic, as now we count time, Asia and Pooh did one of our podcasts on when she had just published her book, I think At the Age of Dignity, and was speaking about this with thankfully she was the first one really on an organized level to raise this issue. But Elissa, do you see a national will in this country right now to tackle, given the demographic shifts that are present? It's not a secret. You just look. Do you see a national will to tackle this issue?
Sometimes I think I see it more than it's there because I'm so deep in all these care activism circles, and I'm so aware of these kind of micro successes that they'll have, I'm so aware of these micro victories that they'll have. But I think when I take a step back, or even in publicity for this book, and people say, what do you mean by the word care? And I was like, oh, wait, I'm in this world where everyone says the word care all the time. We know what it means for the most part. And you take a step back and you're like, oh, wait, no, not everybody's there. So sometimes it's humbling for me because I realize no, not everybody's thinking about this all the time. Just everyone I know is thinking about this all the time. It's I know we've made progress. I know President Biden said the word care more than any president in recent history, as far as I'm aware of. And I think, for me in writing this book, what I really hope to do was to show how we can't just focus on policy change. We have to focus on culture change. We have to focus on narrative change. So when you see a movie about someone going through a profound experience, it's not another sports movie or a war movie. It's maybe a care movie. Or when you go and hear a sermon, the rabbi or imam or, pastors speaking about care. They're centering it. And not, it's very important. Not like, oh, isn't it nice that these people do care and everybody give them a pat on the back? That's sweet. I'm sure we like that. But we need so much more than that. We need care, like we discussed earlier on, to actually position care as this fundamental human experience that teaches us profound things on how to live. So, for me, I'm really trying to work on that cultural change piece in this book and really trying to show how care is woven into every single meaning-making system that we have, psychology, philosophy, spirituality, everything, and how it just was ignored for so long. And, that's my hope. That's my wish and a prayer to help make this change. Is, maybe that politician that never thought to vote on care will catch that movie on Netflix that doesn't exactly exist yet, or hear that sermon, which probably hasn't been said yet, but to make that conversation happen and for them to be like, oh yeah, I guess, this whole care thing, it's real, it's big. Let's invest in it.
We're speaking with Elissa Strauss, the author of this very important new book, When You Care, The Unexpected Magic of Caring for Others. I guess available at the usual suspects, Elissa, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, local bookstores, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, exactly.
Before we run out of time, just the closing easy softball question to close. You allude to this, I think, in the very last paragraph of the book. Having researched this book, having walked this walk, having lived this, do you think if and when the time comes, you will be more receptive to receiving care?
I hope so. I really hope so. You never underestimate human vanity, pride, and ego, right? But I'd like to think, I would like to think I am. And I think part of the audience I want to reach with this book is those receiving care. Because if we could get rid of this idea that care is just a burden, I think it'll also rid us of ageism and this fear of being dependent on others. And because I really believe, I know that giving care has been so profound and enriching for me, challenging, sure, but profound and enriching, that knowing that might be possible for whoever cares for me will help me embrace being in that position.
Well, if we can get rid of the B word, the burden word, as you allude to, I think we're several steps ahead of the game. And that's why the Jewish tradition is so powerful when it comes to this, because it really approaches it, from that contextual point of view, but also from the relational point of view and the sacred point of view, because it's embedded in the Torah and a huge, wonderful discussion in the Talmud. Elissa Strauss, thank you very, very much. Continue, just good luck with this book. Stay healthy. Take care of yourself, and we appreciate everything you've done with this. It's a very, very powerful, very, very powerful book. And if we in Jewish Sacred Aging can help you in any of this journey, just let me know. And the answer is yes. So we'll make it easy. But thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you so much.
To all of you, thank you very, very much for joining us on today's edition of Seekers of Meaning, the podcast TV arm of Jewish Sacred Aging. And again, if you want to contact us, just email me, rabbiaddress@jewishsacredaging.com. The Facebook page, the website also happened to contain a very conveniently located donate button. If you'd like to support our work in these podcasts, just go to the website, jewishsacredaging.com. Click on that button. Just follow the prompts. It's really, really, really easy, and we do appreciate it. Seekers of Meaning is produced at the Broadcast Center of Lubetkin Media Companies in beautiful Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a big shout out to our producer, Steve Lubetkin. Thank you very, very much for joining us on today's edition. Till we meet again, stay safe, everybody, stay healthy, and most of all, be kind to one another. We really need it. Shalom.